Welcome back. Almost half past the hour. House Democrats have managed to win the final uncalled race of the 2024 election cycle. Republican Congressman John Duarte of California has lost his re-election bid to his Democratic challenger, Adam Gray, by just over 200 votes. Duarte's loss means House Speaker Mike Johnson will have a razor-thin Republican majority, with two members set to serve in the Trump administration and former Congressman Matt Gaetz resigning last month. Johnson will have a one-seat majority for the crucial first 100 days of the Trump administration. Meanwhile, a growing number of Democrats are pointing to the congressional map in North Carolina as a key reason they could not wrestle back control of the House. In a new op-ed for the News and Observer, Democratic Congressman Wiley Nickel of North Carolina writes in part this: North Carolina is a state of balance, a true purple state. With our nearly 50-50 split between Democrats and Republicans, North Carolinians expect fairness when it comes to how their voices are represented in Congress. But the Republican-controlled legislature's latest gerrymandered election maps did more than just silence voters in North Carolina. They reshaped the balance of power in Washington, D.C., costing Democrats control of the U.S. House of Representatives. And now, with Adam Gray's victory in California's 13th district, giving Republicans a bare three-seat majority in the U.S. House, it's clear that gerrymandering in North Carolina tipped the scales in their favor and cost Democrats control of the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Nickel did not run for re-election this year, citing his district as one of three in North Carolina that were vastly reshaped by Republican gerrymandering. And Congressman Nickel joins us now.
So Congressman Dave Wasserman had brought this up about a week ago, saying, people don't understand, but a rigged map, he did, not his words, mine, but a rigged gerrymandered map in North Carolina was the difference between Democrats controlling the House of Representatives for the next 2 years and Republicans. And of course, you can go back to 2022, and it was Democratic snafus in redistricting in New York State that actually put Republicans in charge. So I'm just curious, how do we get past this gerrymandering, and how can states like yours actually reflect the will of the voters, the will of the people, and not the will of one party or the other, like rigging the maps?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think the first point, really important from that opinion piece, is that Hakeem Jeffries ought to be the Speaker of the House right now. If it wasn't for Republicans in North Carolina rigging the system for my seat and two others, Hakeem Jeffries would be the Speaker of the House. But the solution, of course, is we have to get partisan gerrymandering. We have to take it away. We have to let the voters choose the folks that represent them in Washington. I have a bill for that, the Fair Maps Act, that would require nonpartisan independent redistricting in every state. But this is the thing that is just wrecking Congress. And in this case, it's cost Democrats control because of a rare mid-decade gerrymander in North Carolina.
So, Congressman, let's go a little deeper about the state of play in your state. Obviously, a toss-up state, a battleground. Donald Trump did win, but as noted here, the Democratic won the governor's race, and now we have hotly contested seats in the House with gerrymandering involved. Is there any recourse there on the state level to potentially try to rectify the problem you just outlined?
North Carolina is a state that has been gerrymandered by Republicans for quite a while. So there's not any, you can't look to our legislature to do anything. It's a gerrymandered legislature. The best hope we have in North Carolina is our courts. We just elected Democrat Allison Riggs by just over 600 votes back to the court. It's a 2-5 court. We've got to win Supreme Court races in North Carolina over the next 2 election cycles before we can get a court back that's going to do fair maps for our state. That's our hope in North Carolina. But nationally, Congress with a simple majority in the House and Senate can end partisan gerrymandering once and for all, and finally put this issue to rest. But it's the thing that's wrecking Congress. Least productive Congress in our nation's history. People should be upset, and they ought to point their finger at gerrymandering.
Congressman, I just want to follow up on Jonathan Lemire's question. What do you think is the right message to constituents in North Carolina, to North Carolinians who, over the next couple of years, are going to kind of see this and wonder why their own kind of identity as a purple state isn't being expressed in Washington. Is the answer here to run more Democratic candidates in races? Is it to organize? What exactly can be done? There is a Republican legislature, so it's kind of hard to overcome, is my understanding. What is your message? What should Democrats be doing?
Number one, we should be talking about fair maps, getting rid of partisan gerrymandering. But the fact is, Republicans do it much more than Democrats. It's wrong no matter who does it. But if you look at the districts that are heavily gerrymandered, North Carolina specifically, where you get districts that don't represent the majority will of the state. North Carolina, again, 50-50 state, 71% of the seats going to Republicans because of extreme partisan gerrymandering. But you look at the country, you've got a little over 10% of the seats in Congress that are pretty heavily gerrymandered for Democrats, but close to 40% of the seats for Republicans that are heavily gerrymandered. The other 50%, more fair districts, independent redistricting commissions in places like Arizona and Colorado. The answer is doing something that applies to all states evenly. But the only way we're going to get change is if folks make their voice heard. And if you're, again, looking at why this has just been a dumpster fire of a Congress and will be for the next Congress, too, the Republicans will never be able to get their act together with such a small majority. It's going to be a mess. And it's because of gerrymandering. There's just no incentive to work together when less than 10% of the seats are truly competitive. That's where we are right now. And it's the thing that we've got to fix.
Now, that's a problem. Democratic Congressman Nickel of North Carolina, thank you so much for being with us.
Appreciate it.
Greatly appreciate it. Claire, it's such a great point. And people have asked the difference between when I was there and now. And so much of it has to do with the fact that when they started doing these lines by computers and could really figure out how to sort it out and make fewer and fewer races competitive in the House, again, no reason to work with the other side. I will say, though, talk about where we find ourselves this morning after, of course, we find out that Donald Trump's going to start with a one-seat majority in the House, probably for the first 100 days, and a Senate that is proving to be a lot tighter. The margin's a lot tighter than anybody expected after the election. I mean, it seems to me they're going to have to either work together in some sort of unity government in the House especially, or nothing's going to get done. What do you think?
Yeah, I think all you have to do is look at the Senate and you see what happens when you have senators that can be defeated by the other party. And that's what's happened in the House. You don't have members who can be defeated by the other party. They can only be defeated in a primary. And that means all the political incentives are to go to the ends of the earth instead of the middle. Instead of finding compromise, instead of finding lasting bipartisan solutions, they are looking for a viral moment to raise money off of so they can prove to everyone they are in the further edges of their party as opposed to a more moderate member. But, speaking of North Carolina, I mean, Tom Tillis, this is a really good example. He's up in 2 years. Now, I don't know what you guys think, but I have a feeling 2026 may be a little rough for the Republicans. And a guy like Tom Tillis is looking at an election in about 10 minutes in the Senate terms. He's in cycle right now. So what is he going to be doing over the next 2 years? Is he going to be rubber stamping Donald Trump in a state like North Carolina where you can't gerrymander a Senate seat, where there are Democrats that have won there, certainly in our recent lifetimes? So he's going to have to find a way to keep his primary at bay and not have the Trump machine come after him, but also appeal to those moderate voters in North Carolina that are going to decide that race.
Well, and of course, Claire, Susan Collins also up in a state that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won easily. So there you have two senators, obviously, that are going to be up. And you're right. In an off year that usually is very bad for the party in control of the White House.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump is going to overplay his hand. If these nominations are any indication of his mental status at this time, he's nominating people that really represent him overplaying his hand. And if he does overplay his hand and try to go to the extreme, then they're really going to have a rough midterm elections in 2026.
All right, former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill, thank you very much.